Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. So last week, the Federal Reserve Chair and the US Treasury Secretary called an emergency closed-door meeting with the CEOs of the most systemically important banks in the country: Citigroup, Morgan Stanley, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Goldman Sachs. Not because of a rate decision, not because of a financial crisis, because of an AI model. Before we go into the details of the story, I would request you to kindly subscribe to the channel and click on the bell icon for regular updates. Now back to the story. On April 7th, Anthropic announced something called Project Glasswing, and the fallout reached Washington within days. Here is what actually happened, and why it matters a lot more than most of the coverage has captured. Project Glasswing is a defensive cybersecurity initiative built around Anthropic's newest and most powerful model, Claude Mythos Preview. The model is not being released to the public. Instead, Anthropic is giving access to a select group of 12 major tech and security companies, including AWS, Apple, Google, Microsoft, Cisco, CrowdStrike, JP Morgan Chase, and NVIDIA, plus about 40 additional organizations that maintain critical software infrastructure. The whole effort is backed by $100 million in model usage credits and $4 million in direct donations to open-source security organizations. The stated goal: use Mythos to find and patch the world's most dangerous software vulnerabilities before attackers can get their hands on a model with similar capabilities. The reason Anthropic gave for restricting Mythos was blunt. In their announcement, they said AI models have now reached a level of coding capability that lets them surpass all but the most skilled humans at finding and exploiting software vulnerabilities. Mythos, they said, had already found thousands of high-severity zero-day vulnerabilities across every major operating system and every major web browser. To put that in plain terms, zero-day vulnerabilities are bugs that nobody knew existed. They are the most dangerous kind, because there is no patch and no defense. Mythos was finding them at scale, autonomously, overnight. Their technical blog gave some specific examples. In one case, Mythos fully autonomously identified and exploited a 17-year-old remote code execution vulnerability in FreeBSD, the open-source operating system that underpins large parts of the internet's infrastructure. Starting from zero with no human involved after the initial prompt, the model found the bug and built a working exploit that could give any attacker complete control over a server from anywhere on the internet. In another case, it chained together 4 separate browser vulnerabilities into a single exploit that escaped both renderer and operating system sandboxes. Nicholas Carlini, one of Anthropic's researchers, said he had found more bugs in a few weeks working with Mythos than he had found in the rest of his career combined. Engineers at Anthropic with no formal security training asked Mythos to find remote code execution vulnerabilities, went to sleep, and woke up to a complete working exploit. That last sentence is the one that should stop you for a second. This is not about elite hackers getting more powerful tools. It is about anyone being able to wake up to a working cyber attack. Now, the surface level read is, okay, Anthropic found some bugs. Good for them. Security researchers find bugs all the time. Why is the Fed chair personally calling Wall Street CEOs about this? Because the speed changed, and because of what changes when that speed crosses a certain threshold. The existing model of cybersecurity runs on a basic assumption that finding a vulnerability is hard. It takes time. It takes expertise. That time gap between when a vulnerability exists and when it gets weaponized is the window defenders rely on to patch their systems. What Mythos represents is a potential collapse of that window to hours. CrowdStrike's 2026 Global Threat Report found an 89% increase in attacks by adversaries using AI year over year. The model is not changing whether AI will be used for cyber attacks. It is potentially changing the speed and scale at which those attacks can happen. And the targets Anthropic specifically flagged, banking systems, power grids, hospitals, water systems, are exactly the systems where a successful attack does not just cost money. It stops people from getting paid, from receiving care, from having power. That is why Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Fed Chair Jerome Powell convened the emergency meeting. Powell's presence in particular was notable. People familiar with the discussions said it signaled the issue was being treated as a systemic financial stability risk, not a tech department problem. Meanwhile, in the UK, the Bank of England, the Financial Conduct Authority, and US Treasury are coordinating their own warnings to major British banks and financial institutions. Germany's BSI, the Federal Office for Information Security, announced it was in direct contact with Anthropic and taking the development very seriously as a question of national and European security sovereignty. Not everyone is buying the alarm. Bruce Schneier, the longtime security technologist and lecturer at the University of Toronto, called Project Glasswing very much a PR play by Anthropic, and noted that the security firm ISLE was able to replicate at least some of the vulnerabilities Mythos found using older, cheaper, publicly available models. Schneier's point was that the capability jump may be real, but smaller than the announcement suggested. AI commentator Mo Batar put it more sharply, comparing Anthropic's model rollouts to Apple's iPhone launches, where every year the same product gets resold with incremental improvements, except here the product is existential dread. The SANS Institute, which trains cybersecurity professionals, landed somewhere in the middle. Their assessment was that dismissing Mythos as pure marketing misreads what is actually happening, because their own faculty have been using current AI models for vulnerability discovery and penetration tests for over a year and finding critical vulnerabilities in production code that was already thoroughly tested by humans. The capability is real, they said. The question is how much further Mythos pushes it, and that is genuinely hard to know because Anthropic has kept the model private. And that last point is where the story gets philosophically complicated. Anthropic is a private company making a unilateral decision about who gets access to one of the most advanced cyber capabilities ever built. Jonathan Erie, a fellow at the Wharton Accountable AI Initiative, put it plainly. Whatever the right judgment call is, the most striking aspect of this situation is how reliant we are on the judgment of a handful of private actors who aren't accountable to the public. Some open-source security researchers argue the world would actually be safer if Mythos were released broadly, so that every defender, not just Anthropic's chosen partners, could use it. Others say that the model will inevitably proliferate to bad actors anyway, and that the window Project Glasswing is trying to use is already closing. Here is what all of it adds up to. Whether Mythos is a genuine leap or a well-executed announcement, the governments and regulators treating it as a live national security event tells you something important about where we actually are. The question is no longer whether AI will reshape cybersecurity, it is whether the defenders or the attackers benefit more when it does. Project Glasswing is one bet on the answer. The closed-door meeting at the US Treasury is the government deciding it can no longer afford to wait and find out. If you like this video, then do share and click on subscribe. Thanks for watching. This is AI Tides, and I'll see you in the next one.